is of local content policy. For those that were here yesterday, my colleague Ian talked about socio-economic benefits that will come from the oil and gas industry or the oil discovery. So I would think that the local content policy is basically your biggest enabler to ensuring that as Namibians we can benefit from the socio-economic benefits. The Ministry of Mines and Energy, who's the regulator in the oil and gas industry, they are the custodian of the local content policy. However, there are many key players who are helping ensuring effective implementation of that local content policy. The local content policy looks at 5 objectives. Just to name them quickly, they look at identifying identification of specific sectors for the development of local capacity, maximizing employment and development of Namibians, maximizing the participation of local suppliers along the value chain, encouraging the transfer of technology and skills, and first, promoting Namibian ownership and financing at all levels of the sector. One of the key objectives that I want to touch on is the one objective where it talks about maximizing employment for Namibians. So what the local content policy will be looking at is obviously to see what type of skills will be needed and competencies will be needed for us to effectively and efficiently implement our oil and gas value chain in the country. And they will then look at what are the skills that Namibians currently possess. And interventions are then going to be developed to ensure that we close those gaps, to ensure that we can at least get Namibians ready to take on managing the oil and gas industry in Namibia themselves. All right. And the second one is maximizing participation of the Namibians in the oil and gas sector. This is now looking at the local suppliers of goods and services. As we said, that the social economic benefits that are going to be coming are going to be immense, they're going to be a lot. So yes, it's only going to look at creating employment. It's also going to look at creating businesses. So if you're an SME, the local content policy is also looking at interventions on how best we can maximize that knowledge and skills and transfer to local folks so they can take up the various skills that will come. For example, your catering that will be needed, your transport, and something as small as even your travel agencies, because it's going to have an influx of people who are going to be importing skills into Namibia, and we probably need to work at looking at work permits and so forth. So that is one the main objective of the second objective in the local content policy. The third one is encouraging the transfer of skills. Encouraging the transfer of skills to foster the transfer of knowledge to Namibian workers and businesses. Okay, so how are you going to do that? Government will require foreign oil companies to develop technology and research facilities in the country to promote and accelerate the development of Namibian citizens. Okay, so as we are gearing towards the first oil production, we do know that many of the Namibians don't have the skills. We'll be importing those skills into Namibia. However, the local content policy is saying that we need to ensure that there are plans that have been put in place to ensure that we are transferring the skills to Namibians to obviously lessen the dependency on foreign skills in the country. In February this year, a group of myself and some of my colleagues, we traveled to Qatar. We went to visit Qatar Energy. And what I was so impressed with how they are busy doing transferring skills to their nationals is that in any department that you went, if you found a foreign national, you rest assured that there was either a Qatari who was an understudy, or there's a Qatari who's been sent overseas to go and develop their skills to take over. So they've got deliberate efforts to ensure that they empower their Qatari nationals to take over this industry and also then benefit their nationals. So we hope that this will also be the same type of principle and framework that will ensure that Namibians are going to be skilled and developed to take over in our own national oil and gas industry. Okay. It's also about promoting Namibian ownership and financing. As we know, if you're starting up a business, capital is very important. So what the local content policy wants to look at as well is to ensure that we have the financing companies and also local investors or even foreign investors who can assist to collaborate with Namibians to set up those various business sectors in the country. So we hear a lot when people talk about, there's so many policies that are written. How will we ensure that this will be effectively implemented? So the Ministry of Mines and Energy, like I previously alluded, they're the custodian of the local content policy. However, we've got key players in the market who also need to ensure that we effectively implement the local content policy. So obviously our regulator will be doing a lot of the monitoring and the regulation of this local content policy. However, like NAMCOR is also a key player in the local content policy. We also have a very, very important task to play. As a custodian of the shareholders' interest in the everything oil and gas, we've got a very big role to play because we are taking care of the country's interest in the national oil and gas industry. So when we sit around the table, sitting with our JV partners and discussing petroleum agreements, as NAMCOR, we need to ensure that we look at ensuring that we get we get the best for the Namibians when we finalize those agreements. We also need to give input to all those oil companies that are partnering with NAMCOR to ensure that the Namibian nationals can benefit from this. And obviously also being an employer, being a national oil company, we're also an employer, so we're also contributing to that to ensure that Namibians are employed in our company. So that's just on high level some of the key things that will ensure that we implement the local content policy effectively. So with the previous discussions, there's a lot of talks about the upstream industry, the downstream industry, but how will I or you make sure that we're able to benefit? All right. So we need to ensure that we look at the national capacity building interventions. So Petrofund was established in 1993, and the reason that Petrofund was established is to ensure that we develop able to develop Namibians in the oil and gas industry. So the government of the Republic of Namibia, through the Petroleum Act of 91, empowered the Ministry of Mines and Energy to conclude agreements with individual oil companies who are granted oil exploration rights in Namibia to contribute an agreed amount of money to Petrofund. So any oil company that is here looking for a license, they need to establish, or the government needs to negotiate a certain amount that will go towards developing Namibia. So that negotiated amount that they discuss, a portion of it goes into Petrofund. I'm sure many of you have heard of Petrofund. We were talking, I think, 80% of our speakers today are all alumni of Petrofund. So you can see it's really a fund that is effective, and we are seeing the fruits of those alumni working in the oil and gas industry. So the various type of studies that Petrofund sponsors, they sponsor high school scholarships for the underprivileged, undergraduate scholarships. Those are not usually specific for oil and gas, but however we know that this would obviously lead to people needing to specialize in oil and gas. That is why they also fund those undergraduate scholarships. They also then give postgraduate scholarships. Usually those are for specializing in the oil and gas industry. And they also assist graduates to get internship placements once they finish studying. Okay. So what Petrofund does and how they determine what type of funding or what type of scholarships they would give. They also look at the market to say, what are the gaps that we have with regards to skills that are needed in Namibia? So if for the past 5 years they've been sponsoring geoscientists, and they realize that we've got quite an influx of qualified geoscientists in the country now, they will then look at the funding for other type of scholarships. For example, maybe we don't have enough petroleum economists or petroleum engineers in the country, and they would then focus their attention on and then funding for those type of studies. So if you want to know more about the type of scholarships that they give, and the criteria that you need to then meet, you can just visit their website, which is on the screen, or you can also give them a call. We've got very, very efficient and quite friendly staff there at Petrofund, and then they can assist you with that.
There's currently scholarship running now.
Okay, thank you very much. As you heard, there's currently a scholarship running. So if you are aspiring to study, please do check out their websites, check out their social media pages, and ensure that you do not miss out and apply. Thank you, Franz. Okay. So remember I talked about the training fund that all local, all oil companies, all license holders need to invest in. 70% of that goes to pension fund. However, 30% is then left for in-house training fund. What the in-house training fund does is that it looks at funding and upskilling employees who are already in the oil and gas industry. So somebody who's working for NAMCOR obviously can then benefit from